When I was in California, I was interning at a church for almost a year, and we went on a staff retreat in a beautiful camp in the mountains. Just a gorgeous place. And at this camp, they had something called a high ropes course. I don't know if you know what a high ropes course is, but it's basically ropes and wood and stuff nailed onto trees, in this case trees, up in the air. You're harnessed in, and you basically go through this kind of obstacle course in the air. It's kind of freaky. It's kind of designed for you to overcome fear. Right, so I was encouraged to do it. I did it, and my butterflies are constant in your stomach. You're kind of tense as you're walking a plank, trying not to fall and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of freaky. I actually got through the course without falling, thankfully. That was very good. But then after the course, they came up to me. It's like, hey, do you wanna do the leap of faith? Like the leap of faith. Okay, I just got through this. Like I don't even know what that could be. I'm not much of a thrill seeker, okay? But again, I was encouraged to do it, so I decided to go. And we start walking to a more of an open area in the trees, and all I see is a telephone pole sticking out of the ground. This doesn't look too exciting. And basically what the leap of faith is you climb up a telephone pole, and then you jump off it and try and get a bar that's a few feet away. And I have a video for you. I want you guys to experience this. This isn't me, but I have a video. I want you to Yep. So that's the leap of faith. It's kind of scary. They made it look really easy. I think at our camp the bar was further away because I was about the third one to go, and other people weren't getting that bar, and so they're just jumping. And you have other team members that are holding on to your rope, so when you fall, that you don't just have a fast landing. If they let go, you have a pretty quick landing to the ground. So I'm getting ready to go, and the things that you're climbing up, they're not very wide. You're like just holding on to this pole trying to get up, and my hands are sweaty, and I'm kind of, my stomach's turning, and I'm getting anxious, and I'm getting tense, and climb up there, and then you get to the top, and a telephone pole, it's only yay wide, and you're supposed to get on top of it, and so I'm kind of tall, and so when I'm, getting down and having to kind of, get up, like even just bending my knees straight, like that's a long ways for me, okay? Like, it's a long ways just to straighten out. My knees are starting to buckle and shake, and I'm like, this is really scary. It's fearful. And fear was starting to overwhelm. And then not only that, I'm supposed to jump now. I'm supposed to jump off of this telephone pole and grab this bar that's several feet away. All right, and at that moment, right, all these thoughts are going through my head, like, well, what if the team lets go? What if I trip? What if I don't jump right? What if I hit my head? Well, everyone else got it down okay. They were okay. They said it was fun. It was a risky thing, but they got through it. So, in a matter of seconds, all that goes through my head, and they're like, okay, we're going to count. You're going to jump. And so we start counting. 1, 2, 3, you jump. And I grabbed the bar. Right? It was pretty exciting, right? And it was okay. But it was an adventure. Like, it was exciting. It was a risk. It was good. I overcame some fear that day. I conquered some fear in my life that day. And today we're going to look at a day in the life of Peter. All right, it's not a 24-hour day. It's just an event of the day. But today, what I want us to do is cross the chicken line. I'm stealing that phrase from another pastor, but I'm going to use it. I want us today to cross the chicken line. Okay? Last week I talked about butchering a chicken in a combine. Today we're going to cross the chicken line. And I may challenge you to respond at the end. And that's part of kind of like a step of crossing the chicken line. So if you have your Bibles, you can turn to Matthew 14. We're going to be reading starting in verse 22. Right before this event, same day, but Jesus has just fed about 10,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Pretty awesome miracle. All right, so that's just happened. And then we get right here to where we are going at. Verse 22. The verses will be on the screen if you need them. It says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat. That's Jesus making his disciples get into the boat. And go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, and said, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart." Some translations say, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." All right, so let's just paint this picture. Jesus is sending his disciples to cross the lake, right? Starting to get evening. This is something the disciples are used to doing. A lot of them are fishermen, like they live on the water. This is normal. All right, but this time a storm actually arises. All right, this isn't just any storm. This is a pretty heavy storm. It says they're being beaten by the waves. Okay, so they're fighting the waves. They're not getting too far. It's a hard storm that they're going off of, and it's the fourth watch of the night. So that means it's around 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. All right, so you can't see very well. It's pretty dark. It's pretty late. Not a very good time. And it's at this time that Jesus decides, hey, I'm going to go start walking on the water. Okay, now picture this. Okay, just picture yourself out on the river at 4 in the morning. Okay, you're on the boat doing something. Well, let's just say there's a storm and the waves are coming even though we don't have big waves. Okay, but there's a storm. And then something starts walking on the water. Are you going to think it's a human being? Probably not. Okay, so the disciples, as far as we know, Jesus has not yet walked on the water. So as far as we know, the disciples still believe it's impossible for a human to walk on water. All right, so they think it's a ghost and they freak out. They're terrified. They're full of fear. So this is our first point, first observation. It's the fear. Okay, let's talk about the fear. Fear. It's one of those things that just kind of controls us. We can't seem to stop it from popping into our heart, popping into our mind, popping into our lives. It's one of the hardest things for us to really overcome. And it's something that we love to make excuses for. It's something that we're okay with living with. We're okay with allowing other people to live in fear. It's okay. And most of the time, we don't recognize fear in our lives. It's kind of an underlying motivation. But all of us deal with fear on a daily basis. All of us do. We may not recognize it as being fear, but I would say that a lot of the decisions we make on a daily basis is because of fear, is out of a motivation of fear. Should I be honest and tell the truth about this? But what if I get rejected? What if something bad happens? Should I start this conversation with somebody I don't know? But what if they don't like me? I don't even know how to say hi. What do I say next? They're probably too busy. Maybe I should pray out loud. Well, but what if I screw up? What if I say something stupid? What if nothing happens? Maybe I should lead a life group, teach Sunday school, help the youth ministry. But I'm not good at teaching. I could fail at that. What if I fail? Maybe I should go pray for this person. Oh, but they're not a Christian. And what if nothing happens to them? And what if I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Maybe I should start being more generous with my money. But then what if we don't make our payments? How do I know we're going to make our payments? I want to ask God for this miracle again, but again, what if nothing happens to me? What if it doesn't change again? Maybe I should join a small group, but what if they actually then find out how messed up I really am and I'm not really perfect? Maybe I should go up and get prayer from a prayer usher, but what will people think? What will people think of what's going on in my life? Maggie and I just had our first baby, a girl, Naomi. And I mean, a lot of you know this. Kids bring a whole new element to the possibility of allowing fear in your life. You know, they hand you this alien and say, go take care of this. And we're like, huh? Why is she crying? Why isn't she crying? Is she sleeping enough? Is she not sleeping enough? What do we do? Why is she hiccuping? What's that all about? Why is her poop the right color? I don't know. And then you, not only that, you start thinking of the future. Oh, who is she going to marry? Are we going to homeschool? Are we going to let her go to public school? Well, the government's taking over the public school, so that means they're going to brainwash her, and she's not going to believe what I'm telling her. She's going to walk away from Jesus, right? We can just allow all these fears of the future dictate what we do and control us. I mean, we come up with so many excuses. I'm not against homeschooling, okay? I know there's some people who homeschool. Bless you, okay? But we make a lot of excuses as to why we do and don't do things, but the reality is, most of the time, it's because of fear. Fear paralyzes us. It controls us. It prohibits us from moving forward. It keeps us from what God has for us. It creates stress. It creates anxiety. It pushes us away from the presence of God. Fear is agreeing with the enemy. Okay? It's agreeing with a lie. It limits what God can do through us. You know, when I think about fear, it really is crazy how much power we give to it, because it's all based around the what ifs. It's all future oriented. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that doesn't happen? It has nothing to do with what's going on right at this moment. It's all future oriented, of that we don't know what's going to happen. It's all wrapped up in the what ifs. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of worthlessness, fear of death, fear of poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of the unknown, fear of the miraculous, fear of change, fear of committing to what God has for us. Fear. These fears are so underlining in the motives that we do and the decisions we make. Okay, so the disciples, let's go back to the disciples. They're terrified, right? They're freaking out, and Jesus just starts laughing at them. Haha, gotcha. No, right? He doesn't do that. It says he immediately says, hey, take courage, take heart. It's me. Don't be afraid. Right? Jesus isn't about leading us into fear. He's not about fear and using a motivation of fear. He's the one who drives out fear. He's the one who gives us what we need to overcome fear. Like, he immediately says, take heart, take courage. I like the definition. I like the translation where it says, take courage. I'm here. He gives us what we need to take courage. I looked up the word for courage. I loved it, the definition. It's just this: the ability to do something that frightens one. The ability to do something that frightens you. I love that. It's the idea of being able to actually overpower fear, overcome fear, to walk over fear. Okay, so let's continue, verse 28. It says, and Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come. So Peter takes Jesus up on his offer. Hey, guys, take courage. And Peter's like, all right, I'll take courage. Hey, if it's you, tell me to come walking on the water. What an awesome question. I wish I would be the one to ask that. I probably wouldn't, but I like to think that maybe I would. Like, the opportunity to maybe walk on water. Wow. Right? And Peter's asking for this miracle. And then here comes the important part. Jesus says, come. This is our second point, the invitation. Okay? Peter could have asked this question, hey, Jesus, can I come out there with you? And Jesus said, no, Peter, stay in the boat. Right? And then everything would be different. Then if Peter stepped out of the boat, what would have happened? He would have sunk. It would have ended quite poorly for Peter because Jesus didn't invite him. This invitation is very important. And it's a crazy invitation. Like, it's a scary invitation. It's a risky invitation. It's an adventurous invitation to step out on the impossibility of walking on water, start walking on water amidst the waves and the storm at 4 o'clock in the morning when you can't see anything and maybe it's a ghost. And the reality is that this is what Jesus does for us too. He invites us to step over the chicken line. Right? To walk on top of fear, to follow him in courage, to overcome fear. And when Jesus invites us, when Jesus says, come, he's not going to let us down. He's actually going to give us what we need to do what he's invited us to participate in. There has to be trust there. Right? Fear comes in when we don't trust Jesus. Right? When we don't trust that he is who he says he is, that he'll do what he says that he'll do, when we don't trust his invitation. But every time that Jesus invites us into a risk, into an adventure, he's going to come through. He will. On his side, He's got it figured out. He's going to come through. He's not going to fail you when he invites us, when he calls us. So Peter's standing on the edge of the chicken line, right? The edge of the boat. He's asking for this miracle, right? And he's just standing there. Jesus said, come. Jesus has invited him. And I think a lot of us have been in this place. Jesus has invited us to do something, to be a part of something, to take a risk, to be a part, to go on this adventure. But a decision has to be made in us. Do we actually say yes? When fear is knocking, right? All the what ifs are coming into Peter's mind at this point. His palms are probably getting a little sweaty. His knees are probably knocking a little bit like, this is a crazy thing that you're asking me to do, Jesus. Right? And you play it over and over. Is it really worth it? Like, what do you do when fear is knocking at your doorstep? When all the what ifs come into your mind? When all the reasons why you shouldn't do it come into your head? What do you do at that point? You know, I don't see Peter stepping back and getting ready for a running start, to jump over like a little kid jumps into a pool. I don't see him doing that. Right? I see him right up to the edge, and I just see him white knuckling that thing, and he just slow, like, do I really do this? You know, and slowly starting to step over the boat, slowly going over the edge. And what happens? Let's go to verse 29. Second part. Jesus has said, come. This is where Peter is, right? He's just about to get over. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. Okay, and again, I don't see him getting on the water. So he gets on the water, which is a miracle in of itself. I don't see him start running to Jesus. All right? Have you ever seen someone walk on very, very thin ice and starting to crack around them? Okay, maybe they start running once they start going down. But before that, right, like every step is like trying to keep your balance, and every step is a risk, and every step is an adventure, and every step is trusting that the ice isn't going to break. Right? You're slowly, like it's cracking, like, whew, you know? Like that's what I see Peter doing. But he's keeping his eyes on Jesus. And the reality is that Jesus never says that we won't feel fear. He never says that we won't feel it, but he says to recognize that it's fear, and then to take courage, to do that which frightens you, to overcome it, to overpower it, because he's invited us and he's going to give us what we need to actually do it. It means that we might actually have to do it with sweaty palms and a beating heart and butterflies and our knees buckling. And you know, I love this too, the reality of this, because Peter was serious about his question to Jesus. Hey, if it's you, let me come out there. And Peter's serious. He didn't say, hey, Peter, or Jesus, let me come out there if that's you. And then Jesus said, all right, come. And Peter's like, oh, I was kidding. You know, like, no big deal. Like, I'm just going to stay here in the boat. I mean, like, this is awesome. He starts walking on water. Have you guys ever walked on water before? No. Have you ever thought about walking on water? Maybe. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult. I mean, this is a risk, right? This is a risk for Peter. This is an adventure. But fear is what keeps us from the adventure that God invites us on. Jesus did not call his disciples, he did not call you, and he did not call me to a risk-free, safe life. Right? Jesus is storming the gates of hell. He has defeated, but he is storming the gates of hell. And that's what he invites us to do. To be the light in the darkness, to go where there is brokenness and bring healing and restoration. That's what he does. He storms the gates of hell. Okay, that's the risk. Like, that's the adventure. And many of us say, oh yeah, Jesus, hey, can I come with you? It's like, all right, come. We're like, oh, you know, I was kidding. I'm just going to stay back and watch from a distance. He called us to a life of risk, to take courage, to conquer fear, trusting that when he said come, when he invites us, that he's going to come through, that he's going to give us what we need to actually make it, to give us the strength, the miracles, the power, the peace, the love, the help. And you know, I want to be that kind of person. I want to be that kind of person who overcomes all fears in my life. I really do. Like, who recognizes what the fears are in me when fear is speaking to me and say, no, like, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be afraid. 2 Timothy 1:7 says this. It's on the screen. It says, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. I want us all to read that. Read this out loud. Ready? 1, 2, 3. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Read it again. For God gave us not a, oh, I can't even read. For God, okay, do it again. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Okay, one more time. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of love and self-control. Okay, you got it? Did you get it? Did it enter in? God did not give you a spirit of fear, even though I can't even read. Okay? And of course, right, okay, the risk, the adventure that he has for you, that he has for me, is different. Right? He may not be calling you to pack up your bags and move. Move to another country, or do this or do that. I don't know what it is for you, but it may not be the same that what it is for me. Maybe he's just calling you to open up your home. Maybe he's calling you to lead a life group. Maybe it's going to a prayer meeting. Maybe it's building a relationship with your neighbor. Maybe it is sharing your faith. Maybe it's giving generously with your money or resources or your time. Maybe it's being willing and available whenever, wherever to pray for somebody that's in need. And just taking courage in that. I don't know what it is for you. But it's going to be a risk, and it's going to be an adventure, and it's going to be exciting. And Jesus will come through if you cross the chicken line. But if we're going to walk on water, if we're going to take Jesus on his offer to take courage, then we actually have to keep our eyes on him, right? We actually have to trust him. Let's go to verse 30. It says, So Peter has been walking on the water, pretty sweet. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of God. See, fear will never stop knocking on your doorstep. It's never going to stop. The what-ifs are always going to come in your mind. Your heart is always going to start beating. Those butterflies will probably always come. Like, the fear is never going to stop knocking. You know, hey, what if they reject you? What if you get injured? What if you get killed? What if you make a fool of yourself? What if you lose this or lose that? What if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? See, Peter took his eyes off of Jesus. He focused his attention on the waves, and he allowed fear to control him again. He allowed doubt to come back in. And this is our fourth point, the focus. The focus. Where there is fear in our life, there is doubt. Fear is the opposite of trusting in God, right? It's agreeing with the enemy. You cannot obey fear and say you trust God. You can't. I know we love to say we can, but we can't. I cannot be fearing my finances and having my hand closed and say that I actually trust God with my finances. It's when I have my hand open and willing to give generously that I actually then trust God with my finances. Right? Like, I cannot obey fear and say I trust God. That doesn't mean we're not feeling fear. It means that I'm actually obeying fear. I'm doing what the fear tells me to do instead of trusting in God. And, you know, so what happened when Peter doubted and had fear? He sunk. This is a great picture of what doubt does to us. Now, I'm a big advocate about having questions for God and being real with where we're at and speaking out the doubts that we have about God and not being fake about where we are in our faith. I'm all for that. But the reality is that doubt causes us to sink spiritually. It does. Doubt causes us to sink spiritually. You know, the waves are going to come. The trials are going to come. Hardship is going to come. If you're storming the gates of hell with Jesus, the enemy is going to do something. He's not just going to let you. He's going to push back. So will we focus our attention on the trials and difficulties, or will we actually trust God? Will we actually trust Jesus that he's actually going to bring us through? So Peter starts thinking, and he models the best prayer in the Bible. Lord, save me, right? Short, to the point. Lord, save me. And what does Jesus do? He just waits and like, oh, should have listened. No, right? Again, immediately, Jesus reaches out his hand and saves him. And this is reassuring, right? When we cross the chicken line and we decide to start walking on the water and we fail, okay, and we allow that doubt back in, we allow that fear back in, Jesus is going to get us back up. He's going to save us. He's not just going to leave us there. But when he does, what does he say to Peter? He says, why did you doubt? Oh, you have little faith. Why did you doubt, right? When we fail, when Jesus picks us back up, we need to be willing to listen as to what we actually are allowed into our heart, what fear we allowed in, what doubt we allowed in, so that we can deal with it. Like Jesus picks us up, like, okay, like you feared this, you doubted me in this. And he tells us that, and we need to listen to that so that we deal with it, we repent of it, and we get over it. And so we don't let that fear to control us again. See, unchecked fear will rule our lives. It will ruin our lives. It will take us away from the risk again. I sometimes wonder, what Peter was actually feeling in this moment. I don't think it was a pleasant experience to start walking on the water and then start sinking. Right? I don't think that was pleasant. I don't think that was enjoyable. And I wonder what if Jesus later on asked Peter, hey Peter, come out on the water again? Do you think Peter would go? Or do you think that he would wallow in his failure, that maybe he thought he was a failure, he failed, and he doesn't want to fail again? Do you think he would step out again of the boat? I don't know. But I think a lot of us are there too. That there have been points in our life where we did cross that chicken line and we failed. And we allowed fear and we allowed doubt in, and things didn't happen the way we thought they would. And so now we're back on the side of the chicken line. We haven't dealt with that fear and that doubt. And Jesus is inviting us again to do something. We're like, see, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to last time. And so we don't step out of the boat again. But when we allow that fear and that doubt to bring it before God, like, this is what I fear, this is what I doubt, and allow him to free us of that, then we're able to go out again, back out onto that risk and that adventure. And I want to offer this to you. When we cross the chicken line, when we walk over fear, when we overcome fear, walk in faith in spite of fear, that's when we actually get to see Jesus for who he really is. When he got back into back into the boat, the disciples fell down and worshipped him. And they saw that he was the Son of God. That when we actually take God at his word and take courage and overcome fear and go and be a part of the adventure and take risks, that's when we actually see Jesus for who he is. Like, is it possible that we get bored with God, we get bored with church, with prayer, with Christianity because we're still living on this side of this chicken line? We're just living in safety. We're just living in the boat, never crossing the chicken line. So what would it look like if we as a church every day decided to cross the chicken line? Decided to take risks. Decided to do what frightens us with our coworkers, with our friends. Or I don't know what it is for you. But what would it look like? I bet Harvey would be changed. So here's a question. What do you fear? What keeps you from crossing the chicken line? For me, one of the biggest fears that I have in my life is fear of failure. Like, I don't want to fail. I don't like failing. Okay? So I fear failure. An easy way for me to not fail is to not do anything and to play it safe. And every time I get up here to speak, I'm conquering that fear. I'm actually overcoming that fear. I like, this is every time, because I can fail every time I come up here. And I had somebody speak into my life when he says, you're going to have to overcome every reason why you shouldn't get up and speak. And I do that every time. I have to get over every single reason why I shouldn't be up here speaking. And every time I get up here, it's a risk and it's an adventure for me. And so I want to be a person that in my life, when fear is knocking on my door and he's like, hey, and those feelings come, I want to be like, oh yeah, okay. Because I'm feeling that fear, I'm going to do it. That's the kind of person I want to become. I'm not there yet. But I want to be the person when I recognize fear in my life, like, I'm going to do it just because I'm feeling fear, and I'm not going to let fear ruin my life. I'm not going to let fear rule my life. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to take courage. That's the kind of person I want to be. And it's hard. I want to mention one thing. You know, I've been to a few churches, a few ministries, prayer ministries and stuff like that. And I've always noticed that women are always praying more than men. There are always more women at prayer meetings than there are men. Always. I've rarely ever seen there be more men at prayer meetings than women. And you know what I've come to realize? That men don't do it because they fear it. It's fear. We don't understand it. We're not very good at it. We don't know what's going to happen. We think it's going to be a waste of time. And we fear it. What if I say it wrong? I'm not going to do it perfectly. I don't know what's going to happen. And I've found that the real reason why men don't pray, come to prayer meetings, is because they fear it. And what we need, right, are men that will actually pray and lead spiritually in this church. If you actually, men, want to take a risk and adventure, I dare you to start praying. And actually start coming to prayer meetings. Because prayer is an act of storming the gates of hell. And so if you actually want to, take a risk and start praying, come to prayer meetings, you'll get a bullseye right on your forehead. And you know what? It may be a waste of your time. And you may think it's a waste of your time. You may think that there's no point to it. You may not enjoy it. It may not be what you want it to be. But I challenge you, men, to lead and overcome that fear that I would say every one of us has. Because prayer is so vulnerable. What man actually likes to be vulnerable? So the first question, right? What do you fear? I believe Jesus today wants to overcome fear. Give us freedom from fear today. I really do. I really believe that. I believe he wants to show you, if you're willing, he wants to show you what the fears are in your life. I could name plenty of them, the things that I respond to. Fear of failure, that's probably the biggest one. Fear of rejection, that's a pretty big one. And I have to overcome those things. Right? And I got to make sure I'm not making decisions based on those fears. So what are they for you? And I believe Jesus wants to free you from that. It doesn't mean you won't feel it, but you'll actually be able to know when it's speaking to you, and you'll be able to overcome it. And you'll be able to make decisions trusting that God will help you. So, and then the second question is this. What risk, what adventure is Jesus inviting you to be on with him? To join him on? So this is what I want us to do. I want to challenge you guys to respond. And I know we don't do that often here, and I was very, very much debating on whether or not I should. But I think there's a lot of fear in just responding, and that just by responding, you're crossing the chicken line, right? And you're willing to come up and be like, hey, Jesus, I'm freaked out. What fears are in my life? And allow him to reveal that to you and begin this conversation with him. Or maybe ask what risk, what adventure he's calling you to. Or maybe that he's called you in the past and you failed and now he's inviting you on it again. So will you please stand? I want to pray, and then I'm just going to invite you to respond. And, we'll be dismissed, but if you want to come up front, stand, kneel, whatever, and ask Jesus to reveal fears in your life and ask for freedom from that, ask for courage from that, I invite you to do that. And And after a little while, the prayer ushers will be up, and you can go receive prayer from that as well. So if you'll pray with me. Jesus, I just thank you that